All right, so we're joined by our annual legal guest, Madison County Schools parent of the in the Maverick Zone, partner at Burr Foreman Legal Group there in Jackson, graduate of Mississippi College Law School, John Lassiter. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got a room full here with us at Velma Jackson. We're recording this for all of our friends at Rosa Scott, Madison Central, Germantown, Ridgeland, the Academic Options Center, and our YouTube channel. We are in the law career cluster. And just a great person to talk about your career in law as well. So we thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you, Greg, and everybody. Happy to be here.
All right. So before we talk about what it is you do on a regular basis and some of the things you've done in your career, take us through your educational background and how you became an attorney.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Clinton, and I went to Clinton Public Schools. I'm a product of Clinton Public Schools. My mom taught at Mississippi College, so I got to go to undergrad. How lucky and fortunate was I to go to undergrad at Mississippi College for free? It was a great experience for me. And then come the end of college, I didn't know what I wanted to do in a career. I was an English major, a lit major in college, and my mom said, "Hey, maybe give law a try. You've always liked legal TV shows like Law and Order and things like that. So maybe if you go to law school and you do well, that'd be a great career path." And it certainly was. So,
yeah, and I think I'm glad you mentioned that because we have kids say they want to be an attorney, which is great because we need more attorneys. But what you see in the legal TV shows, we've all watched Law and Order. I was a big fan of the show All Rise. The Matlock for the older crowd. So all that stuff you see on TV, that never happens. So talk about what skills an attorney really needs, because it's not just nailing somebody on the witness stand and making them confess to a crime that somebody else got accused of.
Yeah, we're probably showing our age when we even say Law and Order. I'm not sure that show's been on TV for the last 15 years. But yes, so growing up, I didn't know that there were lawyers outside of criminal lawyers, probably till I was in high school. And maybe I talked to a lawyer or went to some presentation, and a lawyer said, well, there's a lot of different avenues of legal training and legal work, and I don't do any criminal law, like you said. I fight over money mostly. If there's a contract between two companies, and one of the companies just doesn't pay on the contract or doesn't produce the manufacturing product the way they were supposed to, then that becomes a disagreement as to what the responsibilities were of the parties under the contract, and they battle it out, and sometimes they go to court. And I only think, roughly 2% of cases even go to trial. So there's a lot of legal work to be done outside of the courtroom. And what law school does is it teaches you how to think a certain way and be analytical and kind of look at an issue from both sides. It's a really good it's a really good training educationally, and it can prepare you for a lot of different aspects of life other than just like a legal career. So, no, I'm really glad I have it. I'm glad that I went that route. And I think if you ask my wife, though, she'd be like, it's not easy to argue with a lawyer, at home. So I got to be careful there, not to use my training for evil and only to use it for good. But no, it's a great education. I certainly would recommend it to anybody who's looking into doing it.
Yeah, and you mentioned about how you go to court very rarely. Every now and then you do, and if somebody's interested in being an attorney, you don't really have to be somebody that speaks in front of groups, even though that's important. A good high school classmate of mine has since moved to Arkansas, but she was general counsel for the Mississippi Supreme Court. So the Mississippi Supreme Court had an attorney that worked for them. She was in the office all day, every day. She was reviewing documents. She was comparing it to the state constitution. She was looking at, how things are interpreted. She wasn't going in front of a judge and jury. She was behind the scenes, but using her legal career to really interpret legal things for the people making those final decisions.
No, what's true about the law is true about every career, probably this day and age. It's how you communicate and how you write. And if you're able to communicate an idea to somebody and to talk them into doing something, it's going to be a huge benefit for you in life. And so, yes, I mean, most of what I do is behind a computer, and it can be kind of boring. I don't even want to, I can't lie to a class of high school students. It can be kind of boring sometimes, but it can also be thrilling when you come up with an idea and you use it and then you see it work for your client. So yeah, but most of what I do is behind a computer and writing, and that's just what my day to day looks like. Sure.
Yeah, and then another thing is, you have to look at, so many young people say, I want to be an attorney because they think they're going to make a ton of money. And it's not just something you fall into and make money on.
I think that's true. I think that if you want to make a ton of money, you probably want to be a doctor. Uh, Lawyers come in all shapes and sizes. Certainly, there are some lawyers that make a lot of money. But most of the time, a legal job is going to be a steady income, more commensurate to other jobs you might see. It's rare that you're talking to a bunch of millionaires who are lawyers. That's really not the case. So.
Yeah, and another thing is, I want people to, even if everybody can't be an attorney, but I think it's important to understand attorneys' roles, because just because you're dealing with an attorney doesn't mean somebody's going to jail. It doesn't mean somebody's getting sued over something. There are so many things in our everyday life that attorneys touch. So obviously, one that everybody sees is adoptions. There's more. Adoptions becoming more and more popular in Mississippi. They just changed the law to where single parents can't adopt children. So there's more adoptions happening. Attorneys have to handle that. If you want to buy a home or buy a business, at some point, an attorney is going to have to go through the legal paperwork to make sure everything's up and up on the contract. If you ever want to get married, you're going to, in a prenuptial agreement, attorney's going to have to deal with that. Heaven forbid, if you get divorced and you got a divorce settlement, an attorney's going to have to deal with that. So there are so many things that an attorney touches. And and you hear people say, well, I'm scared to deal with attorneys. It's not something to be afraid of, because like we said, it doesn't mean you're going to jail.
Yeah, and no, exactly. I think one thing about studying the law was I realized pretty quick in law school that, man, every aspect of life is touched by the law. If you fall on a sidewalk and somebody left a banana peel out there, there's a responsibility. Who left the banana peel? How long was it there? Should the business have picked up the banana peel? Should you have seen it? I mean, so yeah, when you talk about every aspect of your life, from child custody to to buying a home, I mean, all of those things are things you'll have to deal with a lawyer about, because they're the ones who will know the rules as to what you're trying to do. And yeah, if you haven't really any interest you have, there's a legal career that could adhere to that interest, or like basically be related to that interest. I bet you that's the truth, that there's a legal career that touches it. So.
Yeah, and then even these large companies, these companies have attorneys that work for them full time that make sure they're staying compliant. And if there is any type of legal litigation, they're the person there that handles all of that.
Absolutely. I mean, every large size business, this day and age, they hire lawyers to come in and just be an employee there. It's called in-house counsel. And sometimes, UMC's legal department, I have no idea, but I mean, there might be 200 lawyers that work for UMC. Who knows? But that's something to think about too. Is if you like a business, or you have a contact at a business, and you have a law degree, it might be a really good fit for you to go and just advise that particular business on their day in and day out operation and what they're doing and whether or not they're complying with the law. So yeah, that's another avenue for a legal career.
Yeah. Now I've got some really good questions when I'm going to get to, but we've got to talk about the role that you played in the changing of our state flag. And I know you play it off, but you actually had a huge role in that a lot of people don't know about. And it took legal paperwork and getting people involved and I think it's so funny. You said from 1894 to 2020, nothing happened. And in 17 days, everything changed. So take it, explain to these kids what happened, because it's really, really cool. And it's a huge part of our history.
Well, thank you. I will say this. I mean, there were many, many people that had a hand in changing the state flag. Greg, Mr. Poggett and I were in college when there was a vote about changing the state flag, and that it really surprised me. I don't know, Greg, if you were surprised by this, but the
absolutely,
vote, like 65% or something voted to keep the old flag. And I just remember as a college student being amazed by that, because of what the old flag stood for and how it made so many Mississippians feel. It just seemed like a no-brainer that would change it. And I'm sorry, I'm getting a little feedback. Can you hear me okay, Greg?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay. And so, for years I thought, well, I mean, the vote going down that way, it'll never change. But I think you and I probably kicked around the idea sometime. The NCAA had a rule the college organization that governs athletics had a rule that Mississippi couldn't host bowl games. They couldn't host, NCAA basketball tournament games, things like that, where a site was predetermined, right? Like where they awarded a site. Man, how nice would it have been if Jackson and the coast could have hosted, things like that. But the NCAA had a rule saying we couldn't because of the state flag. We'd have to change it before we could do that sort of thing. But there was a loophole for college baseball. And I don't know if your kids follow college baseball, but it's a pretty popular sport here in Mississippi. It's not so popular in other places in the country. But I thought to myself, man, if the NCAA would extend that rule to college baseball, because that's not a predetermined site. That's actually a site that's awarded to places based on whether or not they did good during the year. So I got this idea to call the NCAA, and I just cold called them. I started calling people. I just went down the list of people up there and started calling. Eventually got hooked in with a very, very impressive and formidable person up there who worked in their diversity and inclusion group, and talked to her about it. And I told her, I said, look, majority white sports, majority white participation sports like baseball and volleyball and tennis, things like that. Mississippi kids in college can play those playoff games here in Mississippi, but based on your rule that majority black participation sports like football and basketball, these kids have got to go all over the country to play a postseason game. Their family can't even see them, do it here in Jackson because of your rule. It's kind of having a discriminatory impact, on sports here. And man, she bought it hook, line, and sinker. She understood what I was saying, and she understood the idea that if we're not having big football games and basketball games here, we're also missing out on the youth of Mississippi being able to see those type activities and being able to, gain interest in that and wanting to participate in that sort of thing. And so anyway, long story very short, on Juneteenth of 2020, the NCAA announced that they were going to expand that ban to college baseball. And it was all because a group of Mississippians, athletes, college athletes, and former college athletes that I hooked up with, they signed a petition asking the NCAA to change the rule. And they were very brave people to do it. They didn't know that what they were doing was going to be successful. But when they sent that letter in, the NCAA did make an announcement on Juneteenth. And y'all, that flag had existed since 1894. So do the math, 125 years, whatever, 130 years. In 11 days after the NCAA made their announcement, the flag was changed. So, you can draw your own conclusions there as to whether or not it was relevant to the ultimate change, but I'd say it probably was. And of course, I think everybody in this state wanted it to change. They were excited about it change. I mean, not everybody, but certainly, the vast majority of people wanted it to be changed, but they were sitting on the sidelines. And I'll just tell, the people in your classroom and elsewhere that watch this, I didn't ever think I could be a part of the political process like that. I didn't think I had, any ability, but I used my legal degree and I used some thinking, it's just some thought, humanistic thought of like how things work, came up with an idea, and executed on it. And man, it worked to perfection. My kids I put this on Facebook the other day, Greg, like they don't even know what the old flag looked like. They just love the new flag and the magnolia. And I think it represents all of us. And how great is it to have a flag that, we can all be proud of and wear on our lapel and all that stuff. So no, I'm sorry that was such a long story, but it's something I am proud of.
Yeah.
It seems like years ago now. It's been a while, and I've almost forgotten the story, but no, it was exciting. I'm thankful to everybody who was involved. I'm thankful to the NCAA for believing that it would make an impact, and I'm thankful for everybody who, once that NCAA did that, they jumped off the sidelines and became active in the role of changing the flag. So it was awesome.
Once the NCAA spoke out, you had group after group after group in Mississippi coming saying, "Look, we're all behind this," and it was like a snowball effect. Because I think it really was, this group didn't want to be the first to say something. So now that somebody else has said it, yeah, we agree. And it was it really was. There was not many groups that spoke out against it. It was really, really a large consensus of the groups in Mississippi. Now, and along with that, that brought economic development to the state, which again creates more careers and creates more need for legal professionals to stay here in Mississippi. The Amazon Fulfillment Center was built after that because it was changed. So obviously, Amazon's needs a lot of legal things, and there was all kind of construction paperwork that had to be done to build that large fulfillment center in Canton. And then with all the movies that have been filmed in Jackson since then as well. And, people don't understand there's got to be entertainment lawyers. So there has been a lot of legal work that has been created because of that in Mississippi.
People will say that it doesn't have a tangible impact. I'll tell you one more short story if we have time.
Yeah.
I do work for a number of companies. A big German company built a really big steel manufacturing plant north of Mobile, and I do some work for him. And I sat with the German guy that was about my age. This is before the flag change and everything. And he told me, he asked me, "Are you from Jackson, Mississippi?" I've been there before. And I was like, "Oh, really? Like, what were you up here for?" And he said, "We were coming to look at a site, down in Smith County, Mississippi. And we were really close. The incentives the government was giving us were just like Alabama's, but ultimately we decided to go to Alabama and not Mississippi." And I said, "Well, why was that?" And he said, "Well, there were a number of reasons, but one reason was, and I got to be honest with you, I mean, your state flag, we're German, so we understand symbols. We understand the swastika and what that symbol means. And I'm telling you, if we put our plant in Mississippi, the German media would just stick a swastika right next to your flag and would say, why are, Germans, why are they building this big plant in a white nationalist state or something like that?" And I'm listening to this story because I guess, I'd always heard, well, the flag really, it certainly makes people feel a certain way, but it doesn't have this huge impact economically. Well, I know from the horse's mouth that it had an impact in a multi-billion-dollar plant that would have, employed 2,500 to 3,500 Mississippians with good jobs. It didn't come here because of that flag. So yes, it has a real impact. It's only going to have a good impact for us when people in this state pull together. And I mean, when Mississippians come together on something, they make a big time impact. And I think now that we're all pulling in the same direction with that under that flag, it is just a symbol, but it's more than a symbol, right? It means that we're pulling together and that we can change and that we can be better. And I think people all over the country see that, and they'll be more willing to invest here, without a doubt.
Absolutely. Well, I want to get to as many of these questions as I can. And this
Sure.
first one's really good. This is Michaela Dawson, one of our cheerleaders here. And she asked, when it comes to law practice, are you more of a general or a specialist when it comes to the type of law you practice?
That is a really good question. I wish I were more specialized. I do a lot of construction related work, and usually that's a contract and people fighting over money. You see a construction project go up off Highway 55. Well, there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, every construction project you see probably has, 20 contracts on it or something, and so, usually I guess when I was younger, I would concentrate on a lot of those cases, but now, I work, for and against banks. Sometimes I do some work, for and against insurance companies. So, and all those cases, most of the time I'm litigating, which is like an action that's in a court and you're fighting over money. But, I would say that my practice is a little more general, and you kind of have to be that way this day and age. If somebody gives you a phone call and they want to hire you, you need to be a quick study and figure out ultimately what they're dealing with and try to meet their needs. So.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's a good point. There's a lot of customer service involved in being an attorney. It's not just collecting a paycheck. You got to be able to meet the client where they are.
Absolutely.
Here's a good one. This is Mariah Harris, one of our basketball players here, and she asked, "Was you and your family surprised that when they, as you learned about the legal career, that it wasn't like how it looks on TV?"
I was. I remember the first couple of weeks I was in law school, and I was reading these cases, and you basically read case opinions. So you read like just on a piece of paper what happened in a case. You don't ever get to see anything like in a courtroom or anything like that. And that's how law is decided a lot of times, by statutes that our lawmakers write in the Capitol over here in Jackson, or because a judge, at an appellate court like the Supreme Court makes a decision on a case, and that's the law that exists. And I was like, man, this is different than Jack McCoy on Law and Order just beating somebody up on cross-examination, which is a little more exciting, right? So, I was pretty taken aback by how different it was than what I expected, but it's been a good thing. It's I don't look, if I were in front of a jury every day, that'd be pretty nerve wracking. It's a good thing to do and prepare for, every once in a while. But if you're doing it every day, that's some serious hard work and some intense hours. So.
Now, that's a great segue to this question, because this is Jakeithia Brown. She said, even though you don't go to court a lot, do you enjoy going in the courtroom and arguing?
Okay, I really do, and there are some lawyers I know who would never want to go to a courtroom, and I probably end up in court once every 2 months, arguing a motion or trials don't happen as much, but certainly there's a lot of hearings about certain issues that a judge has to decide, and when I walk into a courtroom, even today, and I've been doing this for almost 20 years, like, it feels very formal, and it should, right? It's the courts, and I have to tell myself, because I'll get a little nervous, and I'll be sitting in there thinking, all right, am I going to say the right thing and do the right thing? But hey, once the judge comes in, it's a really neat feeling, like you're ready to rock. I mean, I can't explain it. Like, I guess it's kind of like being on stage or something. The words come to you, right?
Oh, awesome. Here's a good one. This is Micaiah Luckett, one of our basketball players here. And she asked, what do you find to be the most challenging part of working as an attorney?
Wow, that's a good question. I have to keep up with my time. Like in my career, we bill out to clients based on how much time you spend doing something. So you have to keep really meticulous records of the time that you're doing. So that can be a tough part of it. Billing clients, that client service thing you're talking about, Greg, like it exists in a phone call with the client. It exists in keeping them up to date with how their case is going. Nowadays, everything is by email. Clients expect things, they want an answer within 2 hours. They don't want an answer within 2 days, and certainly not 2 weeks. And so, being able to balance your time and make sure that you meet your client's needs, but you're also there for your family and things like that. That's probably juggling time and time management and creating. I'll tell you this, and this is true for any walk of life. This isn't just legal. But if you can create habits, if you can get into habit forming type stuff, good habits where you study during a certain time of the day, where you have, quiet time or you meditate, whatever it is you need to do during a certain part of the day. If you can just have some routine like that every day and show some discipline, then good things usually happen. And so I've got to be more disciplined in what I do. And that's probably the toughest thing, is sometimes I just want to go home at 3:00, but I can't. I gotta finish up those billing timesheets and things like that. So.
And that's a great segue to this question. This is Caden Myers, one of our football players here. And he asked, how do you manage a large caseload when you have multiple deadlines?
Man, you guys have got all the really good questions, because there's, it isn't easy. I'm a partner in my firm, and I think there's a reason that law firms got set up this way, where, a partner, I might have 25 cases going at the same time, and I might have 3 cases that have a deadline in a week, like a court deadline that I can't miss. And so usually what happens is I get together every Monday morning, at 9:00. I meet for an hour with my associates, and we talk about our schedule and what we have going on. And so I'll ask an associate to start, a brief for me or a motion, and they might send it to me that night. Then I'll look over it and make sure that we're ready for the deadline on Wednesday. Somebody needs to cover a hearing there, but really, and I think this is going to be true for anything you guys decide to do, whether it's legal or some other type of work, that there's a collaboration involved. You got to treat people with respect, and decency, and really build on, you guys, so many of y'all that have asked me questions are athletes. And so what it's like when your team is humming together and y'all are together on something and you're successful in it. It's because of the team. It's not just because of what one person does. And a team is always going to be stronger than one person. And so the only way I meet my deadlines is because I have a team of people that work with me, that keep me on my toes, that are there for me when I need it. And so, you just got to keep a calendar. Like, I have an Outlook calendar. And the only reason I'm even here talking to y'all right now is because Greg sent me an Outlook calendar reminder for 10:30 this morning, because if it's not on my calendar, it probably doesn't get done because I won't think of it. I've got too much stuff to think about already. So anyway, I just encourage you to try to be organized and learn how to keep an electronic calendar. But more than anything, surround yourself with people that are capable and that are trying to help you just like you're going to help them. And if you have a good team around you, you're going to be good.
And before I get to this last question, I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing I always say is, unless you are the person in charge, you don't get to choose your coworkers. Most of the time, you don't get to choose your clients. And I always say, you don't have to go home and eat dinner with these people, but you got to be able to work with anybody to get things done. And I think that's really a good example in the legal industry, because you may have people you have to work with that you don't particularly like as a person, but you got to work together to get the outcome for your client.
That's I have nothing to add to that, because that's exactly right. I mean, I think that it is one of the most important things about the working world and really in life is to be a listener. To really, like, if somebody's talking to you and it's a lost skill and it's something I'm not getting. Greg, you and I mean, we didn't have iPhones when we were in college, right? And so, like, this is all new to us too. But, like, you got to look up from your phone sometimes and look somebody in the eyes when they're talking to you and hear what they're saying, not just think about what you're going to be saying back, but really listen to them. All that anybody wants is to feel listened to. And I know that can be hard if you got a beef with somebody, or, like, you're having, you don't particularly like them, but everybody that you come across has their own battles they're fighting. They're important. They're valuable. Just try to treat people with respect, and I promise you, it'll come back, and you'll be successful. And but yeah, no, it's sometimes part of the work life is being able to work and build a team with people that you wouldn't necessarily see in other walks of life or want to be around, and that's okay too. That's all part of this life. So
Absolutely. Well, I just got one more, and this is Marquise Newell. He's a member of our band here. And he asked, is there a specific part of your career that people may not realize is really hard and that you don't like?
um, I don't. For me, my hours are long. Okay, and there's a lot of I'll tell you a story. I sometimes I'll be up here at work at 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And I've got a family. I've got 3 kids at home, and I'd love to be home with them every day, but it's just not. It's not the path I chose, and a lot of times I have, like, time sensitive work that has to be done, and so that can be really hard. I mean, it can be hard to work longer hours when some of your friends are off work, or you want to be home with your family, or you just want to watch Netflix or whatever it is you want to do. But so a lot of times, like, when I'm up here, it feels kind of lonesome or whatever. But it's so funny. I was asking, I was praying about it one day, and I was like, why I'm up here all night? What's the purpose of this? But I tell you, I have a buddy that I've met through that, Dexter, a guy that cleans the building up here. And Greg, he'll come in here and sit, and we'll talk about sports, or the Saints and how terrible the Saints are. And I've gotten to meet them, and I'll tell you, we become like great friends. Like, he'll sit on my love seat and we'll talk for long hours. So this thing in my life that I was upset about, right? Like I didn't want to be up here all night. What's the purpose of it? And I feel alone. Well, out of that came this opportunity to meet a guy that I would have never met, otherwise, had I not been working out here late. And we've, like, built this friendship, and he's meant a whole lot to me. And he's helped me some nights when things have been rough and I wanted to talk to him. And I'd like to believe that I've helped him too. But there's a purpose in everything, and you just got to find the good in what you're being asked to do. And look, it can be hard, but usually what I try to do is take the more difficult things and turn them into a positive, and just be positive about life and what I'm going through. And I know that's not always easy to do, but you're only as happy as you make yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like, you kind of have to decide whether you're going to be happy with your situation or whether you're not. And anyway, I
if
hope
you
that
don't
answers
like your
the question.
situation, you're the only person who can change it.
Yep. I mean, like, you control a lot more of how you feel and what you're dealing with on a daily basis than you think. Sometimes it takes a difficult decision to get out of something and change something about yourself. But if there's a little voice inside of you saying to do it, then you probably know what's right. And I haven't been disappointed. Those times in life where I followed that little voice inside myself and tried to do something a little different, I've been blessed for it. Like, I'll just tell you. And anyway, but no, that's all true. Like, you have control to change your situation. You just got to make good decisions. So.
Absolutely. Now, we're almost out of time, and as always, we thank you for joining us. But before we go, we'll have the kids that see this letter, we'll have some first generation Americans. We'll have obviously a lot of young women, a lot of people that are bilingual. Obviously, I've got a room full of great, intelligent Black kids here. We need diversity in this field. Just like our population is diverse, we need every field needs diverse people and mindsets and backgrounds to be in it. So why should all these kids consider getting into the legal field? Because it needs them.
Well, I think it kind of ties into some of the other things we talked about. I mean, I only know my experience, right? And I need to learn from other people who have different experiences. Whenever you have that situation, whenever you're able to gain perspective from somebody else, from their life situation, from what they grew up as, you're going to have a range of ideas there. And it's so long as we talk to one another with respect and dignity, and like learn from each other and learn how to listen. I mean, the end result of that, as people come together, is going to be better ideas, and ideas that go further and touch more people. Because without that perspective, like right now, I'm doing a case for a Guatemalan national. He started an American company, he moved up here. It's in South Florida, and I have gained so much perspective from just learning how he came here. How he entered into the contract, like how he looks, culturally, how he looks at the job he did versus how the American companies have treated them. And honestly, I've been shocked by it. I've been shocked by that different perspective. So, the world needs more of that. The world needs to hear more perspectives and understand them. And the only good comes from that. And certainly my firm takes it very seriously and is trying as best they can to hire and encourage, people of color and others to like come into our firm, to come into the legal practice, and change, ultimately change the field and how we do things and how we look at things. So yes, each one of you, young people in this state, we need you. We need you to stay here, to build this state, to change it for good. And part of that, in a really great way to do it, would to go into a legal career, to get into a legal career, continue studying, like work on it. It's not always easy, but you can make a huge difference, and we hope you do. So,
absolutely. Well, again, thanks for joining us. I know you got a crazy schedule, but John Lassiter, Burr Foreman, right there in Jackson. Go Saints.
Thanks. Who dat?
All right. See ya.
See you, bud.